I'm doing well. How are you doing, Vlad?
This is awesome. Listen, I love having you on the podcast. We've tried this intro a couple of times already, but this is perfect. I just want authentic content for this. It's awesome to have you on. Thank you for accepting to be here. I know you have a busy life, busy agency life.
Yeah, well, you're going to hear these little dings in the background because of that busy agency life, but I'm happy to be here.
That's all good. That's all perfect. So before we kind of dive into the stuff that I wanted to ask you today, why don't you just kind of let us know a bit about yourself? How have you started in the advertising, world? What have you done? And why are you here today? What are we going to talk about today?
Before we jump too far into me and who I am, does the audience know our relationship, how I know you?
Yes, they do know. I've introduced that at the beginning. Yes.
Okay, that was that pre-recorded bit that you mentioned.
Course.
So I'm going to pretend that you set me up as just this amazing professor that once taught you instead. Boy, a bit about me. I don't want to go on too long because I could drone on about it, but I've been in the advertising industry in one form or another for 20 years now. So I was a direct mail writer, kind of slogging away right at the start, and then transitioned, got my master's in advertising, became a copywriter, and it's in New York City back in 2004. Bounced around as we all do in advertising. You kind of do that, bounce from agency to agency, taking advantage of different opportunities as you go. Became a creative director, and then jumped over to education, which is how I met you for a bit. Moved down to Savannah, Georgia from New York. Was there for about 3 years, so from 2016 to 2019, and then I came back to the business and to the industry and to the city, and I've been here since. So yeah, all in all, it's been a fun ride through the ups and downs of the industry, and also kind of how it's changed in the last 2 decades.
It was very interesting because whenever you arrived at SCAD, I didn't know anybody in the advertising department. I didn't know that you had just joined SCAD. I didn't know that you had just taken a break from the industry. And when I found out that I was getting to study for advertising for the first time with somebody who was fresh from the industry and someone who had all these campaigns, it was awesome. It was like a humbling moment for me, and it still is today. I know you came from New York to Georgia in 2017. First of all, what made you decide to want to go teach, at SCAD or anywhere? What made you decide to become a professor? And then why did you decide to go back into the industry a year later,
Well, I'm going to fact check you. It was 2016, so give me a
2016?
Yeah.
All right. I took you in 2017.
Yes,
you
exactly.
Came in 2016,
yep.
Right? My bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, all good. Okay, so what took me into education from the industry? I think that as I was, let me say that I had taught before. Not only when I got my master's degree at University of Texas, I actually was the first TA for the Texas Creative Program. And I taught labs, for the largest classes at the university under the professor and the woman who had started that department and then went on to Oregon. But so I got my toes wet there in education and really loved it. There's something about creating and helping to see that aha moment, come on to people's faces. And when they realize that they just came up with something that was really smart and really good, there's something so gratifying, and the experience of, experiencing somebody else kind of go through that success. And I often find I'm an under the radar type of person. I think I tend to feel more gratification from helping others to succeed and do well. And that's kind of always been my case. So when I was in the industry, and I think we all go through this, anybody who works in creative will hit a burnout factor. And typically it comes about a decade in, and I saw this happen to a lot of friends of mine. And you you've done some pretty hard dues paying. You've done some pretty hard nights, some long hours, some really you've given up a number of vacations. You've done tough meetings. You've had harsh critiques. You've gone through criticism after criticism. You've seen campaigns that you love die at any given stage. And you just, it kind of, it takes a little bit out of you. And I think that a lot of creatives have to decide what they're going to do to refuel that inspiration. I saw a few of my friends go off and actually start other businesses, just leave the industry entirely and create their own thing. I saw many go freelance and just decide the freelance life was for them. And, for me, education, SCAD came calling, and it was a bit of a swerve for me. I was a creative director at the time at 360i. I knew that I had always loved, as a creative director, that same kind of aha moment that I had experienced as a TA, and I taught for a year at Chicago Portfolio School back in 2008. So when that happened with SCAD calling, it almost felt like this universe moment, like the universe
right moment,
is like it's reaching out to me. And I said to myself, I don't know what they're thinking. They must be nuts, but I'm going to get on this train until they tell me to get off this train. And,
right.
And they offered me the job. So I was like, well, I guess I'm staying on the train then. And, let me just do this. I'm totally one for take chances if you think that it might lead you somewhere new or it might unlock something for you. And so I think going down there for 3 years, it was so great in so many ways. It was tough in other ways, which, ultimately also helped to lead me back to New York. But for me, I think working with you guys, working with you, other students, watching class after class, and just these students and people that I just so remember when I was your age, and being able to play a part in that, and you're in that portion of your life where you can really see it's all so wide open and it's so exciting. And, that was great for me. You kind of become more in service of the world when you are in service of others. And I think in some ways, you are more in service of yourself when you are in service of others. So
that makes a lot of sense. That's awesome. And I wanted to tell you that feeling that you had in class, that you could share with people what you once felt. I remember being on the other side of the coin, one class where we had to come up with some headline, and I was pretty foreign back then. It was my first year still in the United States, so I didn't know the language you guys used. I know how to speak English, but I didn't know the words that you guys use in the culture. I didn't know the word plays. I just didn't get it at first. And you came in, and I think it was a Whitfinn's headline, and you just wrote something, and I was like, you just came up with that, and you're like, don't worry, you will do it. One day it will come out as easy as that. And I was like, no way. Like, one day, if you keep going at it for 30 years, you will get there, or 20 or 40 years, you get at a certain level of mastery. But I was like, wow, it was like sorcery. And it inspired me not only to be a copywriter or advertising or whatever. I was like, wow, you can get so good at something if you dedicated so many years. So that message definitely came across to me.
Fewer than that, Vlad. I think that I watched a lot of you guys get it in 2 years. Do it in 4. And once you get into the industry, and then you just kind of start to get into the rhythm of it, it just becomes, more second nature to you, because you do. It's Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 Hours, right? He wrote the book that, kind of went through that. But it truly is practice is always going to be part of it. And I think I played for you guys Ira Glasses on Taste, right?
Yeah,
that bit about you are not perfect at what you start, but what we all start with is taste.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it was that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and
it was good.
I always played that for the intro classes, because One thing I find that everybody who starts into any creative industry, but certainly advertising, just needs to be reminded of is that nobody around you is perfect. And 5 years, I'm not perfect. I still 20 years in, I mean, you might look at it like sorcery, but to be honest, the internal experience of anybody still 20 years in is going to be probably pretty reflective of your internal experience. It's just that you learn coping mechanisms or like easier ways out, or you've just been through things enough times to kind of have a shortcut through. So, I get it.
So you come to SCAD, you teach, you become a professor and the chair of the department, and you decide to then go back to New York later on. What would you say made you take that decision? And what did you take from SCAD with you that helped you improve the industry? Not so much SCAD, but the students that you worked with at SCAD, the environment, the system.
First of all, I want anybody to know who's listening that I have shut off the Microsoft Teams because I couldn't personally stand that beeping noise over and over again. So my apologies if I gave people like nervous shudders at the start of this whole podcast with that.
Thank you. That means a lot. If you turn off your notifications for me, that does mean a lot. It wasn't as bad, honestly. I got used to them, but maybe the listeners won't. Yeah.
Did you? Okay. I'm sorry. To the listeners, I've got a campaign launching soon. So we were looking at edits, and so everything's happening all at once. Okay, when I came back, what made me come back, and also what did I take with me? If
there was anything that influenced your creative from then on.
I don't think, Vlad, there could be an entire podcast episode, maybe series, dedicated to me trying to I took so many things from SCAD. Let me put it this way. I took so many things from my experience in Savannah, Georgia, and from my experience at SCAD that it's honestly hard for me to, and it's been hard for me to synthesize it down into something that I could easily answer, but I'm going to do my best. But I almost feel like if there are any of my former students listening, that the number one answer is, I honestly have had a hard time reacclimating to the city because there was something really kind of like lovely and pure about the experience of being down there, being away from, all of this. In many ways, it's been a very strange experience because when I left, I was very embedded in the industry and I was very embedded in the culture of it. It was all I had known for 14 years at that point. And it's like I saw something else. It's like I saw a spaceship and now I can't unsee that spaceship, right? And I think stepping out of the bubble that you create around your own life. I mean, I'm not even talking about the bubble of Brooklyn or the bubble of New York City. I'm just talking about the bubble that one creates around their own kind of personal sphere. When you step out of that and you live into an entirely different experience, it really does change you. And I think it kind of, the trajectory of your life really does kind of pivot. So when I came back to New York, I don't think I was even at the time, I had no expectations of coming back and just picking up where I left off. I kind of knew it was going to be different. Why I came back is because I was starting to see you guys graduate and feeling like, take me with you. And that's not to say, good heavens, get me out of here. It was more, I really miss being in the field, being in the middle of the action of creation. And I missed the production. I missed kind of that energy when you get a team together who, are all coming together to sell this campaign that you're going to put out there, and the artistry that goes into it, the craft that goes into it. I missed it because it was like presenting, there's something new every day in advertising. And I kind of felt like I still had a lot more left in me to do that and to keep doing it. And teaching could always be a part of me and I could always come back to it. So when I got back, I think that like, please cut it at any time because I also don't want to just.
Don't worry. I really want to hear everything about it.
Okay. When I came back, there was something about an understanding. It's almost like you don't take things so seriously. There were certain, I'm going to say this in service of all teachers. Teachers have the hardest job. And I truly mean it. And I'm not saying that just because I'm like that Brooklynite who's, just talking it from the outside. I feel like before I went into academics, I was like one of the people in the industry who was like looking at teachers going, oh God, they've got it so easy. They've got summers off, and kind of doing that whole bit. Like they don't have a boss like this, X, Y, or Z. And then you get into it and you realize, oh my God, teachers have the hardest job because I was suddenly faced with creating, classes are 3 hours long in SCAD, and you're basically creating like TED Talks, 20 TED Talks, right? And you kind of have to go, because it's 20 classes, right?
Yeah, it's 20 classes,
You're doing 20 TED Talks where everyone has to have a different topic, or there's got to be something that you guys take away. Like it couldn't just be me up there just kind of BSing for 3 hours. You all were literally coming into my class, sitting down and looking at me. And I had to give you something of value.
Yeah, give me information, please. Come on.
I always felt it was a little like birds, birds kind of coming to the mom who just used to kind of keep filling them with stuff. And it's a different kind of responsibility. Like it might not be the responsibility of we've got to shoot a $2 million TV spot or $100,000 campaign. And how are you going to do that? Or this brand is relying on you. It was like, I used to say to my friends, I'm looking out into a room of 20 human beings who are relying on me and faculty members who I'm managing. And not just those 20 kids in my immediate classroom on any given day, but the other 300 of them. And those are people. Those are futures. And you can't let them down, or at least it's not in my nature to allow myself to let you down. So it's a real toll. It really truly does take a toll. So when I came back to advertising, there almost was a sense of like, are you kidding? I get to sit in meetings all day and I don't have to present for 3 hours to you guys, like twice a week. This is amazing. And like, I don't have to give you projects and then spend, my weekends just grading and like writing notes.
Looking at stuff that's like entry level. And I know you obviously like to see, beginnings, but you're like used to seeing stuff that you're submitting to Khan. And now you're like, oh my God, how can I communicate? I know it's obviously not like that, but it's like, you have to adapt a certain point of view in order to judge the work and grade the work that you're doing. That was completely different than the eye that you were using to critique work that was going to go to awards. That's what I mean. Yes or no?
But Vlad, you're giving yourself, I think you're shortchanging yourself. Like it was never that. I never minded that. I actually really loved looking at the early work that you guys would do in the intro class, because it was really fun for me to be able to see the sparks, because I could see sparks from some of you that you didn't even know you were sitting on, right? Like, there are some students in your class. I mean, I could still picture your class. I could still picture you sitting close to my desk, front in the horseshoe, and you were right there up next to me. And I can like imagine looking over at, Sydney from across the way, Solis. And I think that she had done a Wheat Thins campaign.
Yeah, I was with her on that one too.
Yeah, and she wrote this headline on it that I was like, oh, like.
Can't believe you still remember that. You were impressed by it. So impressed.
Yeah. She wrote the brawl headline. It had to do with like taking your bra off at the end of the day. And I just remember thinking like, you're a writer. And
awesome.
And I'm like going to the ones who are, you're an art director, or like, you've got great and I loved that. It was more the repetitive nature of it. And, I think a lot, look, all credit, because I say that, and I don't mean to say this with any amount of like, oh, it's so repetitive. I have nothing but respect in the world for teachers.
Right.
It truly, if I could just popped in there for like those bright moments, I think,
that would have been good.
And I'll probably come back for more of it. I mean, it's why I'm teaching I'm teaching a class again now, because it came my way and I was like, I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to do it again. Yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. So you come back from SCAD, you start working in the ad industry again. I guess it was like you trying to see, okay, maybe through learning, I can fulfill this certain type of creative need that I have. Or it was a certain part of you that you wanted to dedicate more time to, right? Teaching, that's what you said. So when you came back into advertising, I was always wondering, what makes you want to channel your creativity into creating ads? Because you have you're a speaker, I don't know, have you written a book? I'm so sorry. I have read a lot of research, but I have not seen a book there.
I've thought about it. I know you remember my lectures too.
They could have been a course in or a book in it on themselves. Like I still have the PowerPoint presentations that you sent us at the end of the semester. It was so much value.
I was going to say those really lame little graphs that I would make. I mean, I have thought about taking some of those and then breaking them down into lessons to help, like the if-then chart and like the true purpose core. I mean, I named them all things too, but like I thought about it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So why out of all the creative outputs that you could have come up with, because I feel like advertising people can be creative in so many different ways. Why making ads? What does coming up with a campaign make you feel that wants to keep you in this creativity flow, and it wants you to keep in this industry? What makes you want to be an advertiser?
Well, I mean, this goes way before, even anything with teaching. I mean, what makes me want to go into advertising? Believe it or not, I picked this industry when I was 12 years old. I was this like strange middle school kid who decided I needed to know what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Back then I actually was an artist. I used to do art all the time when I was a kid. I had a drafting table that I asked for Christmas one year and I got it. And I used to do my own cartoons and I would just draw all the time. And I knew I wanted to do something creative. I also knew that there was something I loved about puzzle piecing, which I'm going to get to in a second. But I look in the lamest way possible. I used to watch a lot of television when I was a kid too. I basically raised myself on TV, and I thought one day I want to be an artist, but my aunt told me I wasn't going to make any money. So I was like, hold on a second. I got to make money.
Everybody can picture that aunt as well. Everyone who's gone through an art program.
You're not going to make any money if you're an art. That's it, something like that.
Yeah.
And she told me this is the China Garden. I remember it. we were having Chinese dinner, chicken fried rice. So I watched commercials all the time, and I found them, and then I kind of realized, like, wait, somebody's got to make those commercials. And I think that there were a couple of movies out around that time, like Baby Boom, and like there was that series 30 something. And for some reason there was like a cult of showing people who worked in advertising in pop culture at that exact moment. Yeah. And I was like, I like whatever they're doing because this seems fun. They seem to be playing Nerf football in the office all day and they're coming up with TV commercials. Like, how can it get better than that? Yeah. So I kind of picked it and then just like, was like, I'm going to go for it. Now, when I was in college, I also started working at my college newspaper. I started at University of Maryland. I transferred down to Charleston, but my advertising was also through the journalism school at University of Maryland. Okay. So I had to go through journalism classes and I really enjoyed the writing. So I had always thought I'm going to be a commercial artist. I always thought I'm going to do like design. There's going to be something more art based. When I took journalism, I really dug into the idea of me being a writer and enjoying, I've just really enjoyed like crafting a sentence. Like it's been forever, just trying to kind of like find the best way to turns of phrase and whatnot. And so when I got my first internship in college, they kind of, it was this teeny little place in Charleston. And it was one, it was like so small. You're kind of doing a little bit of everything. And I had to write a radio spot for a plastic surgery company, a plastic surgeon in the area. It was, like not my finest, but I just really loved it. I love the challenge of radio. I love the challenge of like, how are you going to get people's attention, all this. And that's kind of when I was like, there's something to this writing thing. And what I also really liked about it, and this is where I'm going to get back to puzzle piecing, I so loved really taking what to me was like a challenge. It was like the brief was a challenge. How can you talk to these people about this brand with this message and make them care?
And it's like a formula.
It's like yeah. And I used to say to you guys all the time, break it down and build it back up again. You probably remember that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, yeah, the whole like, pretend it's like a box of Legos. You buy the Legos. It tells you you're going to build a spaceship. You build the spaceship. And then what? Like, are you just done? Are you just going to not play anymore? Like, that's the only thing? Like, that's not true. They're Legos. They're little blocks. You can piece them together into whatever you want. So you have all the tools there. It's all the same pieces, but you can make a lot of different things with it. And that idea of like, there's so many different ways that you can cut this. And, oh, it's so fun to kind of put them all together and figure out like, well, what's going to be the best way? What's going to be the thing that like rises to the top?
Yeah.
So that's why, I really, art plus commerce is also something I say to you guys all the time. That's what advertising is. It's art plus commerce. To me, some people who are just pure creatives, who just really are just artists, they can't take the commerce side of it. And I have always been kind of geared toward, a little bit of sprinkle of business mixed with the creativity. And, and in that, if you can fall in that little piece, you can put up with it. The pure artists who just don't want to actually deal with a brand or clients, I don't think they'll love it. But yeah, if you can kind of deal with the sprinkle of business and you get up for that challenge of the audience and brand and all that, then yeah.
I think that's a good point. I was telling you this about myself before, and I was grown up with a business mind as well, with an art side as well. And I remember you telling us it's art and commerce. And I went into it, and I love business. I used to have little smoothie stands when I was a little kid. I had some orange juice because I saw American kids sell lemonade in American movies. I couldn't sell lemonade. Nobody drank lemonade in Romania, Eastern Europe. So I got orange juice. And I was giving orange juice, and I noticed that my dog would eat certain grass from, certain grass that we grew when she would have a stomach ache, and it would make her feel better. So I would like rip the grass, package it, and go in front of my house and be like, "Hey, does your dog have a stomach ache? I was like, I can package this and sell it to it. I can take this, package it, and give it to somebody else." And when I entered the world of advertising, I was like, it's a challenge. And that's what you said. I think you chose advertising because it challenged you, and it was a bit of a competition. And that's what, maybe you don't get from writing a novel or painting a picture that's all on your terms, right?
Yeah, but you can always look at it like, I mean, writing a novel, to be honest, I'm intimidated by that.
Right. Not to say that it's not challenging.
I'm intimidated by that challenge. That one's almost like, Luke Sullivan, who is a teacher at SCAD and was the chair before me. He's written a couple of books, and I'm always astounded. I'm just like, God, he's talk about a man with energy, because to be able to teach and do the business and sit down and write a book, and many people have done it, but I'm like, this is one thing you're basically hitting upon something I think I start every year with this conversation to myself. This is going to be the year, Emily, that you're going to just figure it out, sit down and write.
I think you need somebody who can you give here's the content, make it a book, plee. I did it. That's all you got to do. I think we'll talk about it later. I know a person. So I really wanted to ask you this, because through the pandemic, through the quarantine, life has changed. And I hate bringing up yet in another podcast what's going on in the world. But at this point, we cannot just ignore it. Everyone was kind of stuck at home. The way we interacted with people has changed. I'm not saying for the better, for the worse, it's just changed. I feel like a lot of us have had to adapt to the situation in order to survive in the creative field. We had small businesses that started dipping their toes into the digital world. There was a small business here in Lakeview that was not making any sales until they blew up off of TikTok. And now there's a line in the freezing cold every day to get coffee at that place. And I feel like adapting and having this creative awakening was something that a lot of us went through. Do you feel like you went through a similar awakening through these crazy times?
Yeah, I do. I think that, I don't know if I have gone through the same kind of creative awakening where it's, fueled my career as much as it's just kind of, fueled or been in service of me as a human, my experience in this world. I think that it makes everybody stop and spend time with themselves, looking at themselves, reconsidering the world. And then also you get the people that are truly presented with what seem like insurmountable challenges. And then you've got to figure out how to get out of that. Right. And so I think that the pandemic just made everybody stop and kind of reevaluate different things in their lives. For some people, it was themselves. For other people, it was my business, how am I going to do this? And then I think, for other people, it was just kind of the course of their life. And, boy, I don't want to say, because I have a lot of, there's so much compassion, right, that goes out to everybody who's gone through this, who's gone through the pandemic, because, so I don't want to be the person who's so therefore, if you didn't figure out a way to learn something about yourself, then you failed.
Oh, no, definitely not.
I'm look, if you didn't do anything last year, but you sat around and you just sat there and watched Netflix all year, no judgment passed. If that's what you needed to do to get by, totally. If you feel like you look back on 2020 and you didn't make a big change, it's totally okay. But yeah, I think that there are times in the world where there's going to be a fast, speedy age of advancement, right? Age of enlightenment, right? Something's going to happen that is going to basically jet fuel you into and the next era and whatever we're going into. And I think it is when the world presents the greatest challenge is when that's going to happen, because otherwise you're kind of existing in a place of malaise. You're kind of existing in a place of status quo. And if you're living in a world of status quo and everything kind of is what it is, you are not presented with the challenge of coming up with another solution, right? Because whatever you're doing seems just fine. I'm going to work, I'm paying my bills, cool. Whatever I'm doing is working. Great. And then when everything just grinds to a halt is when you go, huh? And then people have time to go, wait a minute, I'm not okay with these massive, failures in terms of how we are. And I'm trying to think about how to even function. Say this. Yeah, how we function, our cultural values, our political values, our socio-cultural, political values, socio-political value, all of that. That's where you get a year like 2020, where it seemed like massive steps were made after years of fighting over Colin Kaepernick, where it just seemed like we're going through molasses with that. And why can't anybody get it? And, what is it that people can't get about him kneeling to bring awareness to, police violence or white privilege and, everything, right? It's been going on for years, right?
Yeah, of course.
And it takes something like that to go, now you're going to pay attention. We're just going to basically do a fissure right down, right? The year and everything that you look at. So on an individual nature, then the same thing happens. You go grind to a halt. What have I not been paying attention to? What have I just been accepting? What have I been allowing to kind of linger there in molasses? And I think for me, in a personal kind of nature, it makes you stop and go, what is it that I really want? And this is going to seem totally unrelated to creative advertising, as my last 5 minutes have, but, it made me stop and kind of go, what did I really pick up in Savannah? And what are some things that I absolutely have just been in my head, right? Since I got back to New York. And it was really unusual for me to walk around the city of New York and not look at the Empire State Building with an amount of awe, right? And wonder that I was living in this city and working in this city and making it in the industry and all that. I had done that every single year that I lived here, year after year. I would look at the Empire State Building and almost stop in my tracks on the sidewalk with a moment of awe, and then I would keep going. I could look at Lower Manhattan from Brooklyn Bridge Park, which is close to my old apartment. And I was always I was playing Carly Simon in my head from the movie Working Girl, because I was just so excited that I did it. And when I got back from Savannah, I didn't have that anymore. I would just walk around the city streets and it was just the city street. It was just I don't know what it is. I just live here, but something's been something is sitting with me and I don't know what it is. And I think that when everything paused, I really had more time to appreciate that which I had lost by moving back. So by being so focused on, getting back to the industry and getting back to the city, I had also missed the point of, I loved so much that life slowed down for a moment, that I had a yard, that I could just garden, that I had kind of moved into a different chapter of life. And maybe I was unable to accept that then, but I'm ready to accept it now. Yeah. And maybe I need to redefine how I live in the city, allow myself to get out, give myself those opportunities, start to kind of pursue those things as what really fills me up, as opposed to just going to a museum, which is great, but going to a museum and a coffee shop. Maybe I just drive out to Woodstock, New York, which is 2 hours from my old apartment, just to walk around a lake and then drive back the same day, which I would do. I did that a lot in the fall. I would just drive up to the Catskills, walk around a lake, go to a farmer's market, and drive back.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so simple, yet it generates so much happiness. I feel like a lot of people, like you said, have had to stop and think and stay with their own thoughts. And for a lot of people, and for myself too, it was very scary. It was scary for a bit to sit with your own thoughts and at one point be forced to do nothing. There's so many things you can fill your day with until you realize that you're just trying to fill your day with stuff to keep yourself from not being bored. Mm-hmm. So what can you, I think that what you're trying to also say is that it gave everybody a moment to really reflect on what they really wanted in life. For me, for example, I realized a lot of things that I thought I wanted, but I didn't want. I was an intern last summer, and I can honestly say that the part of me that wanted to be so badly in advertising was the same part of me who held very dear onto a strong ego, because advertising and competition, I was a student athlete all my life. So advertising and sports, were competition for me. I was always in a competition for me. And that fed my ego. So I wanted to go and be an intern. I was an intern. I was a copywriting intern in Chicago, in the middle of a summer. Chicago was the best in the middle of the summer, 2019, no pandemic. It was an awesome experience. Every day I was like the superstar because I put so much work into it. Like first one in, last one out every day. I was taught really well what to do to be the best intern, So I loved it. And then when I came back the next year, I'm not saying the company or whatever, I'm just saying into the industry, it wasn't that. It was like, oh, I don't get to hang around people and be constantly pumped up. Like, oh, look, it's Vlad. Look at him. He's such a good creator. It's the raw work. It's you and the writing and the content. And it's that. And it's like, wait, I don't know if I like that as much as I liked having this image of Vlad being, the dude at the office. So I was like, what do I really like? Because I still like writing. I like doing this, but not for an ad agency. And so I took that and I'm trying to still find it. I'm not saying that I found what I like yet, but I'm trying to take it. And I think it's more so working on my own terms.
Yeah.
My question is, through all of that intro, moving on to the next point, you mentioned that advertising and Colin Kaepernick and everything has been going on. And immediately what jumped to my mind is advertising within the millennial culture and culture in general. And I know that you did the bad lip reading campaign for the NFL McDonald's a while ago. I think it was 2000 and what year was it? 2015?
2014. And I'm going to say, I didn't do bad lip reading. I used the bad lip reading. The influencer had just come out and started. He just put out a video. I just basically was like, I'm going to tap that for McDonald's ad.
Yeah. And it was something as simple as like merging what people liked on the internet with a brand in a way that wasn't invasive. That was so revolutionary. And then later on, we saw, Nike take on athletes that made a statement like Colin Kaepernick. Why? You mentioned how that campaign, bad lip reading. I'm going to stop saying that. The campaign for McDonald's with NFL was one of the first campaigns, if not the first campaign, to successfully enter in the millennial culture on the internet in an authentic way that hasn't been done before. Why was it possible on that project and not other projects? Why was that the first time that you could finally say, all right, we can do something that's more than just advertising? It can be an experience, it can be entertaining. People can have a good time seeing ads. They don't have to mute them.
I mean, I think it was always possible. That was just, advertising has kind of been has gone through little ebbs and flows and taking turns and caused by the rise of digital, the rise of social, the rise of whatever it is at the time, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was created at a time period when brands did not understand how to use artists or influencers in the correct way. So I think social was still coming up. I think that the Oreo dunk in the dark. So the year that the Super Bowl, the lights went out was 2013. And it was the next fall that I had done that bad lip reading campaign for McDonald's and NFL. And, when the bad lip, the Oreos dunk in the dark thing that 360i had done, that was a single post and it blew the minds of everyone because it was a single post that understood about being reactive to a cultural moment. So be reactive and immediate to something that's happening, so that you're truly being a brand that's actually responding in real time.
Yeah.
That was like, you look at that now and you're like, that was a single post. How did that win Grand Prix, everything possible that year? But it was a clear shift in the understanding of how brands can operate within social and within the world of, kind of becoming a little bit more playful and doing things where they could speak to the audience in more organic ways, or they could kind of start to blend themselves into social channels as opposed to put themselves on top of social channels, right? Because up until then, it was a lot of like content calendars and almost brands only operating on social as if they're taking print ads and they're resizing them into in-feed posts, right? And like nobody cares. So brands had to understand how to actually live authentically and organically within a feed, create a voice. That's when you start to get the Burger Kings and the Wendy's. Create your own voice so that people actually want to follow that voice. So people are like kind of drawn to you. And doing the bad lip reading was just kind of part of that, where by tapping the bad lip reading, and it wasn't just, oh, hey guys, bad lip reading's cool, why don't we use that? Yeah. There was actually like conceptually an idea of, it was for Mighty Wings, of players being just loving the Mighty Wings so much that even during a game where they should be focused on the game, they can't stop talking about Mighty Wings, so that they're even talking about them from the sidelines. So to sell that in to the client, I wrote like a faux script about the types of things that you could fill in. And we had to also convince the client, don't just try to copy the idea. Don't just try to do what this bad lip reading guy did, which at that point he had released one NFL video that had taken off. Don't just try to do that. Like, you've got to actually use him. Otherwise, nobody will care, because people will just call you on your bluff and they'll be like, this is just an ad forcing themselves into culture, as opposed to understanding that you need to kind of play with and become part of culture for you to be accepted. So I think that's why. And Adweek wrote an article about like early, some of the best like early examples of understanding how to speak and create advertising within that social space, and bad lip reading was referenced within that article. Yeah. And I don't think I realized that it was even recognized as something kind of consequential within that space until after I saw that article, because to me it was like, yeah, you have to use him, because otherwise who cares? Like, you're just kind of a joke and people will be like, McDonald's, Yeah,
of course. I think that since then, there's been 8 years have passed. How can you talk to immersing a brand within the culture today? Because I think that today, for some reason, it's even harder to be authentic, which is an oxymoron. It shouldn't be hard to be authentic. You just are, right? You just are authentic. But for some reason, it is so hard for brands to get it right. Whatever they put out, someone's always going to hate on it, but whatever they put out, how can brands be authentic within the culture right now, where there's a lot of, tension?
Mm-hmm. Well, some of the brands that started early, years ago, started to like lay the foundation for who they are, and were able to establish an identity early on. Then kind of came into the rise of social and into this sphere of where we are now, with kind of like a leg up. Like they had a head start because they didn't have to build an identity on social. They already had one. So they just needed to take that identity and then now apply it to what was going on in the social world or the cultural world. And they could speak more directly to things that were happening, and do so with credence because they had been doing it for years. So if to bring up Colin Kaepernick again, but the Nike campaign, the Believe in Something, you know, if another brand had taken that on that had not had years in depth of proven, established themselves as proven in the, support for athletes, progressive, whatever it is, like just do it kind of like find your greatness space, I think that people would have called their bluff. And even Nike actually had an issue, I think they came out around pregnant athletes where they had to correct pretty quickly, and they did. But again, they were able to pivot because they had that already built. Brands that did not have and didn't build that kind of cred, right? That then just tried to jump right in and just go just into the deep end and be like, we're here. People could call their bluff way more easily. So if you look at like just from the cultural perspective, you remember the class where Pepsi had come out with the campaign.
That was the one I had in mind all the time you were talking. Yes.
Yeah. And so you remember basically I had a lecture prepared, but I was like, we're not doing this lecture. And instead I'm going to spend 45 minutes on why this is bad and break it down. And a lot of it had to do with, you have no permission to play in this space because you have not asked for it or earned it. And a lot of brands have earned it. So, that helps. Like the Taco Bells and the Burger Kings and all that, they also earned it by creating voices that they stayed connected to. And, like that is them. There are brands who pivot almost every 2 years that you can tell like, well, I don't really believe anything you're saying because you're you keep shifting it based on whatever you think we want to hear in any given time. And that can't work. And then I also think that there's a lot of brands that probably spend a lot of money on influencers, but doing it in the wrong way. They're just shelling money out for content creators to create work, but who's really seeing it? Is it actually moving the needle, or are you able to identify people that truly are culturally relevant? I mean, look at Travis Scott. Let's go back to McDonald's.
Yeah.
I didn't do this one, but the Travis Scott meals. I mean, boom, right there, right? Like,
and they targeted me and the Latin culture with the J Balvin meals. They had the first Latin artist they ever did with. And I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely that definitely goes in. And when I saw Travis Scott, I was like, yeah, that definitely is McDonald's. Yeah.
It's like, you got to know who are you connecting to even in that field? And does it make sense for the two of you to even be aligned? That's also important because you can't take a brand who's like, no, I'm going to connect with this super cool artist. If that brand has no reason, what are you talking about? Even when, Chris Paul and State Farm came together, those two made a lot of sense. Right? Aaron Rodgers and State Farm have had a long-standing relationship because those two make a lot of sense for what the brand stands for and basically kind of like what each of those athletes kind of represent within their individual fields around leadership or, kind of support and, being a teammate, State Farm would not have picked a player that would not have aligned and made sense. And that's smart because that's also part of it.
Yeah. I know you also have to go real soon. So I'm just going to close with the last one.
I can hang for 15 more because I know that we kind of small talked.
That's awesome.
And I'm having fun talking to you. So it's all good.
I really appreciate everything that you're sharing. I just wanted to say that before I continue. I think that first of all, I wanted to mention that day when you taught the Pepsi class, the 45 minutes on Pepsi, when I saw that ad for the first time, I didn't understand. I didn't get it. I was like, everyone was saying this is wrong. And I was like, what's going on? Why is everyone mad? Why is everybody mad at this girl? And I knew it was Kendall. I knew who she was. And I was like, I wouldn't have chosen her, but why is it? And then I realized, okay, this is a brand who then I understood what the role of brands in people's lives and the impact they have on people's lives. And when some brand comes out with, for example, when Pride Month comes and the brand never ever posts anything about, LGBT, and then the Pride Month, they post one post, which is like proud of everybody. It's like, dude, no, for the rest of the year, you're silent on that. Like, what are you talking about? So I feel like now the consumer is the boss. Unless you give him, I mean, it's always been, but now unless you give him authentic content that is like, yeah, this aligns with these values that I have and does not contradict these other values that I have, then I'm going to go with this brand. I feel like the job of an advertiser has gotten a lot harder this year.
I mean, the job of an advertiser has definitely always been hard, believe it or not. But and let me say, like, it wasn't Kendall Jenner's fault,
right.
And that was one of the things that I think you learned in that class is it is the responsibility of the brand and of the people that are creating the work to truly look at the work that they're creating and, to determine, is this right and is this smart? And I'm not saying, you should look at everything, right?
Yeah, no, of
Some
course,
things are just kind of given, but I think in that case, that was like truly somebody, and I think that Pepsi had done that in-house. It was like somebody else needed to be able to come in there and kind of provide it. And this is another argument for, conscious inclusion of, hey guys, we should probably have a diverse workforce so that we're listening to a diverse, group of perspectives, because somebody can tell you something that you hadn't even been thinking about.
Yeah.
And when they are able to present it, because that's more connected to maybe something that they're paying attention to, you can't unsee it.
Right.
And you have to also go, well, damn, that's right. I mean, like, the number of things that have probably been missed and lost. And when you go back to, like, pop culture in the 80s and you go, how did anybody think that this was? And I watched it and I go, how did I think that was okay? When I look at it now and I'm like, oh my God, it's like the world has changed. Advertising has become difficult. The world has changed, and the awareness level of all of us, our self-awareness, our our ability to look at the other person who's sitting across from us, because again, it's like when you are presented with challenge, it will shine a light. Like, I think it's like when a door opens, a window opens. I'm going to get that wrong, but
when one door closes, another one opens. Or something
and it feels like that has happened in so many different ways, and we have all been forced to look at ourselves in different ways, right? So, advertising, it's difficult, but it's also so great that it's difficult. It's it's so refreshing that we are having these discussions around diversity and around, is that right? And should we, the definition of beauty, I mean, Dove, and I taught from that one too, because that one to me is just a classic kind of brand platform, real beauty. And I think Ad Age named it like top campaign of the decade at the time. Whoa. But they'd been talking about real beauty for years, but it took a really long time for then this kind of idea of, hold on, right. Body shapes, who we are, gender, like, are you straight? Are you gay? Are you cis? Are you gender nonconforming? It doesn't really matter. You're all beautiful. Like, let's celebrate it. It shouldn't be that tough. And, there are still difficult conversations to be had around it, but in so many ways, I'm like, it's kind of enlightening. And
change isn't supposed to be easy, right?
Yeah. And I'm also learning so much I taught you guys. I'm familiar with Gen Z, but I'm still learning.
It's a little bit better now.
Regular. I know. I know what to expect. I'm like, I know what's coming out. So all of you people in the agency, you have no idea, but I'm going to, no.
Listen, I'm so thankful for you coming in. And before I close, I do want to ask you one question that I think is going to help everyone that's listening today. There's a lot of people right now who are struggling to either find a job in a creative field or start a business in a creative field, or just try to make a living while also being able to practice what they love. What kind of advice, if any, do you have for them? How can they either go through these times easier, and how can they increase their chances of either getting the job they want or doing what it is that they love doing?
Okay, well, job you want and what it is that you love doing sometimes are different. And sometimes in the process of getting the job you think you want, you realize the thing that you actually want to be doing is you kind of have learned yourself, right?
Yeah.
You're an entrepreneur. I actually think that's going to be whatever you do, that you will find it. For people who want to get into advertising and kind of come into it and are finding it to be a challenge, I would say there are still jobs. There are still many jobs. There are still jobs for juniors, particularly, because always our industry will need you, because I'm getting older and less in touch with what you guys are doing by a second nature, on what you grew up with is different than I did. And so you are more connected to the things that advertisers want to be connected to. So to me, I'm like, look, guys, use it to your advantage. Youth should not be a hindrance. Youth should be something that will actually help you get into the door. Now, to get into advertising, I don't know how you see it anymore, Vlad, and I'd be so curious to find out from like you and your friends. When I came into the industry, I had an advertising agency and a job in advertising defined in one way of like what that ad agency is and where I needed to be in order to qualify as I'm working at an ad agency, or I'm doing the job that I thought I wanted to do and what I studied to do. It is so different, the landscape now. You truly could find a job in so many different kinds of agencies, and you could be in-house or you could be at an ad agency. Being in-house in so many ways is like kind of more interesting. You almost have a little bit more freedom, I think, in a lot of opportunities. And so I would say open up the definition of where it is that you think you're supposed to be working in order to qualify as I got the job that I had gone to school for. Like whatever you think you're supposed to be doing, sometimes that's not always right. Like you can open, like on a dating app, like you can open your dating range a little bit,
Right,
you can go from like 50-mile radius to like 300-mile radius. And then you're going to have so many different, right. Yeah. And sometimes you'll discover like, this is great. And it's to what you were saying before, Vlad, like you would define yourself around your ego.
Yeah.
To be this means that I am good enough. It means that I have
4 years
made
to college
it because I did this and I did this, right? And then therefore I'm worth it. And I what I can say to anybody is like, coming up is don't define yourself around that. To get the job that you think you should have does not mean that's not the value of you as a person. It's not the definition of your worth. It doesn't define whether you made it or you didn't make it. If you get a job, first of all, congratulations, like great. And now you are the master of, you're the captain of your ship. Where do you want to sail it? From there, you have left port. Where are you going to sail it now? Now it's open, but you at least you've left port. And I just would strongly say it's like, you got to look at yourself and go, and I think your generation does this. Do not define your self-worth around what you think you were supposed to do or by what your parents might have defined it for you. Allow yourself the ability to shake it off and see that you are so much more than that. And if you get a job, great. And by the way, there's so many jobs out there.
This is awesome.
Go to LinkedIn, follow We Are Next. There's so many things on LinkedIn. We Are Next, like make sure that you're following all those types of sites and podcasts that actually speak to juniors and people coming out. Do all those things, but just from a spiritual level, go easy on, be kind to yourself. You guys have worked hard enough.
I wanted to tell you that what you just said touched me more than you think, because I came to the United States I was still a student athlete. I was a tennis player all of my life. I came to the United States. I was going to go to the United States on a sports scholarship. Well, I couldn't get a sports scholarship because SCAD won't offer, many liberal arts schools don't offer a scholarship for both academics and athletics. So I gave up the athletics and I had to pursue academics, to continue getting my scholarship, and because I liked academics. But I suddenly had to stop a sport that I'd been playing for 13 years that was supposed to get me so much money to save me from paying for college. That was not the case anymore. I had to quit from one day to the other. I just had to quit. And then when I graduated college, I was like, great, I'm going to go be a copywriter. And here I am 7 months later, not being a copywriter, but doing a lot of other things that I love, one of which is copywriting. Part of it is I haven't left the copywriting. I've left the agency. I haven't left my craft. I've left the environment that I practice my craft in. And I was like, oh, this is what I like. And I hope that the words that you've spoken today can help other people make that change of like, wait, is it that I hate my job, or do I hate what I do at my job? Is it that I don't like, is it the idea of me not wanting to go work for somebody that's stressing me out, or what is it? So when people look for the job, keeping an open mind into what they want to work with, I feel like that is the best that they can do. And from the little experience that I have as a 23-year-old, I can really say that, yes, you touched so deep on that one. I'm like cheering inside, like, yes, guys, please do that.
I mean, look, I'm 43 now. When I was 37, I had a moment of, and I remember sitting in my therapist's office at the time with this conversation, but I had that conversation around, I reached the point that I'm supposed to, that I always saw that I had in my mind as the thing that would be the definition of me, that would define me as a person, that would make me, that would mean that I am important and I am worthy and I am, and that's it. Like everything else should be smooth. Say I made it, and why does it feel so empty? And why does it feel like it doesn't feel like it was supposed to feel? And there was that movie Soul that just came out.
Yeah.
Right on Disney, and there's this great allegory in the film. I mean, this is almost what the whole film is about. I had to watch it 3 times because I was like, oh my God, my brain's breaking, because this is like, it's so touching. But there's an allegory where it was like the fish goes to another one and says, I'm looking for the ocean. And the other fish says, you're in the ocean. And the fish says, no, this is just water. And says, yeah, this is the ocean. You're in it.
Yeah.
Like you're in it. And that idea of like, whatever you're in it. You're like enjoy the process of life. You're already in it. And it's not like, oh, you need to be here for it to be worth it, or for you to be worth it. And I think like, that was one thing I got from SCAD in Savannah. And that was the thing that when I came back here, I think that I've been kind of like, right, that I thought I was this was going to be it. And now I realize, no, I'm just in it. I'm working, I'm doing the challenges that I love to do. I'm writing. And at the same time, I can also miss the yard. And I can also realize that I also needed a part of that Like that was important for me. And I need to take that with me and students with me and whatever that connection was to them and that ability to and I need to incorporate it now and to, you know, I'm not just leaving one, but bring it all together and just live it.
Yeah. I all I heard throughout this podcast was the theme of going with change, with the change that's happening and trying to take bits that benefit you through change and try and incorporate them into the next version of yourself.
Yes, you just nailed it. Thank you.
That's good. I have a good professor. I have a good professor. What can I say? Thank you so much. I feel like you brought more value than I even expected you to me and to everyone that's listening. And I'm gonna play this for Marg as well, so she can watch it as well.
Good. Well, listen for the. I think you've got more than 5 listeners, but I hope that however many.
It's gonna, however many I hope they get something to take home today. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I wish you good luck in continuing to lead the advertising industry. And I'm excited to see what other stuff, comes out of MullenLowe and all the accounts that you're working on.
Yeah,
as well.
Me too.
Thank you. You will be, I can't wait to see the stuff that's going to come up in the next few years. I want to see what advertising is going to pivot. It's going to be nice.
I'm sure there will be pivots. There always will be. And Vlad, thank you for asking me. Thank you for inviting me to do this. It was really fun. It was really good to see you again too.
Of course. It was great to have a conversation with you too. And I hope to have you on sometime down the road again.
Count on it.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Sure thing. You too. Bye.
Thank you.